On the 4th of July, we're going to hear all the patriotic homilies, all the celebrations of freedom and the founding heritage of the United States, from the Magna Carta to the Declaration of Independence, to the Constitution, to the Civil War, to World War I and World War II. And if you turn on any television station, any radio station, or you look in any newspaper, this is what you'll find: the supposed virtues and freedoms of the United States. But there's one freedom that is often overlooked, and that seems to be the freedom that America has done its best to spread throughout the world, and that's the freedom of enterprise, the supposed virtues and blessings of the free market, keeping places open for business. And on this 4th of July, I'd like you to remember some of the places where this free enterprise has been exported to, and to just ponder the consequences. We have, and this is just since World War II, how about in Italy in the late 40s, when there was a chance that the Italian Communist Party, which had proven itself in the resistance against fascism, was going to win the general elections, and the CIA made sure that they did not. How about Greece in the late 40s, when fascist collaborators were backed by the United States against the native resistance, and concentration camps were set up throughout the country? How about the Philippines in the late 40s and early 50s, when a national liberation movement was crushed, and the United States backed the landlords and capitalists of the Philippines? How about Korea and the devastation wrought by the so-called Korean conflict? How about Iran in 1953, where the reforming president was overthrown and the torturer known as the Shah was installed? How about Guatemala, where the country was made safe for the United Fruit Company? How about Indonesia in the 50s and culminating in a massacre of at least 500,000 people in 1965, to keep the country safe for business and to keep reformers and radicals out? How about Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos from the 50s to 1975, where 4 million people died as a result of United States policy? How about Haiti in the 60s, in the 90s, in the 2000s, where any attempt at reform was suppressed and dictators were extolled? How about the Congo, where the reforming leader Patrice Lumumba was assassinated and warlords were backed to keep the country open for business? How about Brazil in 1964, where reforming president was overthrown and replaced by a military junta? How about the Dominican Republic in the mid-60s, where another reformer was kept out and business was brought in? How about the continued subversion, sabotage, and terrorism directed against revolutionary Cuba that dared to defy the will of the United States? How about Bolivia, whose continued military governments have been backed by the government of the United States? How about Angola, where the United States supported Portugal's colonial war to subjugate the country and the later terrorism of CIA-sponsored murderers? How about Nicaragua, where after the US-backed Somoza dictatorship was overthrown in 1979, counter-revolutionaries were keeping the country safe from communism by destroying subversive schools, farms, and hospitals to make sure the population feared these infections of communism? How about Chile in 1973, where the reforming government of Salvador Allende was overthrown in a brutal military coup, and disappearance and mass murder became the order of the day, all sponsored by the CIA and the State Department? How about El Salvador, where millions died, where thousands died as the result of death squads sponsored and supported by the Reagan administration? How about Iraq, not just in 91, but since 2003, with tens of thousands have had to die what oil companies have made out quite well. How about Afghanistan, which has suffered CIA subversion, the sponsoring of Al-Qaeda, and continued U.S. occupation and involvement since at least the late 70s? And of course, the Obama administration is getting in on the action with its interventions in Libya and its sponsored coup in Honduras. And lest we forget also that Hugo Chavez has suffered a coup in 2002, and the dirty hands of the CIA can be seen all over it. These are just some of the countries named. I can't possibly name them all. But in order to enforce the fifth freedom, freedom of enterprise, millions across the globe have had to suffer so that a few in the United States could profit. I ask you to ponder this on the 4th of July.